Hello, this is Jonathan with the Hometown Historian. We are here at the Derry Churchyard historical marker here in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and we're in Dauphin, I believe in Dauphin County. Yeah, we are. It's the oldest pioneer graveyard in Dauphin County. Here near pastors William Bertram and John Rowe lie heroes of the French and Indian Wars and the Revolution, and Colonel John Rogers, a signer of the Hanover Resolves of 1774. So we're actually going to go down that way, and that's where the Derry Presbyterian Church is, and we will talk more about that, and we'll actually check out the old cemetery there and do a video on that as well. But just wanted to quick stop by that marker and make the video, so we will see you in a bit. Hello everyone, here we are at the Derry Churchyard. This is the oldest cemetery in Dauphin County. There are a number of individuals that are buried here, like Colonel John Rogers. They actually have a listing of the Revolutionary War and French and Indian War veterans that are buried here. You'll see up there at the top Colonel John Rogers. He was one of the signers of the Hanover Resolves, which was the earliest basically papers of its time, and it was very influential along with many others that followed to eventually lead to the Declaration of Independence. And those were signed, I believe, June 6, 1774. Colonel Timothy Green was the chairperson of that committee. Colonel Rogers was very influential as well as him. This was, at that time, there was no Dauphin County, it was Lancaster County, and both Colonel Rogers and Colonel Timothy Green were both highly involved with the Lancaster County Committee to also put up the grievances of the frontiersmen, the settlers here, and they were citizens of the British Empire, but they were not treated equally, and that was a lot of what was behind. They were not very happy about how they were treated. But so very awesome cemetery. William Bertram, the first pastor of the Derry Presbyterian Church, is actually buried here over in the corner. There are supposedly 2 U.S. congressmen are buried in here as well. Colonel John Rogers is in here. We're going to try to find his grave as well, and so we're going to get about that. And this is the Pennsylvania Historical Marker Series, and this is for the Derry Churchyard, oldest cemetery in Dauphin County, Pennsylvania, here in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Thanks everybody. Hello everybody, this is Jonathan with the Hometown Historian channel. We are here at Derry Presbyterian Churchyard, and there's the church. If you remember correctly, back in the day, when I had just gotten out of surgery a couple months later, the first place that I did a video with Cliff, the Wandering Woodsman, was here at Derry Presbyterian Church. Here's the plaque that talks about there's over 40 Revolutionary War soldiers here, and I believe it was 27 from the French and Indian War. I've read that there's also 6 former pastors that are buried here, most notably William Bertram. There is supposedly one or two U.S. congressmen that are buried here. I haven't been able to find any information on that. There are a couple other figures of historical note. Also, Colonel John Rogers, who's one of the signers of the Hanover Resolves, is buried here. And I have found his grave. I did a little bit earlier here, and my battery ran out. I wasn't paying attention, so we're going to redo this video. But also found out a cool note. Over there in the northeast corner, there are quite a few Native Americans buried. And they said back in the day, I guess during the French and Indian Wars, they buried them 3-4 deep. So the local Native Americans would have no idea how many of their brethren were actually buried here, which is why there's nothing over in that corner, because there are graves there, but it's Native Americans from the time of the war period. So we're going to quick go over here to Colonel John Rogers' grave, and like I said, there are quite a few. I've been trying to do as much research on Find a Grave app as I can, but I haven't been able to really find much in the way of different people of note. I did find 2 of the pastors. This right here is in memory of Colonel John Rogers. And I believe he passed away 1799. Unfortunately, a lot of these stones, you can't really read them very well. But that's sort of the way with old cemeteries. I think the first person buried here was 1734, I believe. 1735 it might have been, and it was a John Campbell. There's also a James Galbraith, who was quite important in this area. He was one of the local community leaders. He actually wrote the Quaker leadership of Pennsylvania to tell them that we don't have enough help here, and we're being attacked constantly. We need help. And they just they preached pacifism and sort of just ignored the problem and figured that, oh, it'll work out, but it was not working out. A lot of people were dying, especially he was talking about the James Galbraith, about the area of Manada Gap where the Native Americans were coming through. And that's what eventually caused one of the pastors of this church, John Elder. He is called the fighting pastor, fighting preacher, and he organized what would be called the Paxton Boys or the Paxton Rangers to have them located throughout the communities of this area to be able to defend the people. And of course, out of that, unfortunately, came the tragedy of the Paxton Boys, where out of the anger and the frustration of everything that was happening with the Native Americans, they actually attacked the Conestoga Indian tribe, only 20 some odd members, and committed two separate massacres. And unfortunately, in these wars, especially in the French and Indian War, most of the time the people that were being hurt were the innocents, whether it was the Indians or the Native Americans being attacked by the settlers, or the settlers being attacked by the Native Americans. It's just sort of like the anger was just redirected and misdirected towards the innocents. So they were the easy targets, and therefore they bore the majority of the wrath. But this would be the corner here where the Native Americans are buried. So they said in the pamphlet they have at the there's a small building in the glass enclosure, which is the old pastor's study. It's called the Sessions House. It's on the National Registry of Historic Places. They have pamphlets there, and it actually talks about those individuals and like the people that are here. Doesn't go into detail of talking about who's all buried here, which stinks, because I'd really like to do a lot more research and find out, different people in here. There's some pretty important historical figures in here, beyond just every single one of these people obviously is important, but that played a major role in events. So, but yeah, here's a couple more Revolutionary War vets. Like I said, it's throughout this entire place. There is a guy, like a newer grave. I don't know if I'll find it, but he was actually the president of Milton Hershey School. He actually went there and was a pretty beloved member of the community, obviously much more recently. I believe he died not that long ago. But they do have, like, if you go in the Find of Graves, if you go through the different the graves there, they'll talk about, like, they'll sometimes have information on them, because there's actually a guy buried here as well, which I forget the name now, but he was actually, his father, because a lot of the people came were Irish, Scottish immigrants. His father was actually a Scottish chieftain, and so he has a very Scottish McSomething name, and his father was killed in a really important battle, and the family then wound up moving over here to the United States. That's a pretty unique stone. It has whatever that is. I got to do more research. I keep on saying about, like, more research on what some of these symbols mean, because some of them have different symbols. A friend, Kathleen, she sent me a video on YouTube that talks about some of the, especially like the German symbols, what some of them actually mean. And that was a really interesting bit there. But unfortunately, a lot of these stones you can't, like that's Sarah Graydon, but a lot of them you just can't tell. Another Revolutionary War vet there. I think I am definitely gonna get through this and make this a little shorter because my foot is killing me for some reason today. And I gotta worry about the battery as well, but that's not being nice to me today again. This guy was a war, William McCord. He was War of 1812. Those ones are much more rare. When you find those, that's pretty unique. I definitely would like to do a lot more research, especially some of these really old cemeteries, because you just never know. Like a lot of these people, these were the first settlers of this area, and yeah, some of them, played really intricate role. There's one individual that I found over in old Hanover Presbyterian, and he was actually a U.S. congressman, and he served as the treasurer of the United States, not the secretary of the treasury, but the treasurer, which is a different position, a lot less famous. But it's still pretty cool to find out somebody, because I was looking for like the Hanover Resolves, which that was one thing I found out as well. There's some confusion there. They had Colonel John Rogers is listed as being buried over there as well, which what actually in reality is that's the church that he used to go to, is the old Hanover Presbyterian, but for some reason Colonel John Rogers is buried here. So I don't know if he moved over to the Hershey area, which at that time was just called Derry. Sort of wondering if something along those lines had happened and then wound up being buried over here, or he sometimes somebody traveled over in a certain area that wasn't their home, and it was just, depending on when they passed away, if it was in the middle of summer, it was just easier to bury them at the local Presbyterian cemetery, because otherwise, in the middle of summer, they didn't have a lot of the ways of taking care of the bodies as we do now. So you would bury them more into just a local cemetery. So we're going to go through this a little quicker, because this battery, for some days, sometimes it decides it wants to be nice to me, and the next time it's like, nope. And it just goes down really quickly. I want to get over to William Bertram's, but this is a unique, really just beautiful cemetery. It's a shame they took down all the trees over there, and they have a lot of those stones that I have piled up right now. So I don't know if those were stones that were over there and they just moved them over here, or what happened. But I'd like to at some time come back here and do another video after I spent quite a bit more time, just because there's so many individuals here from that early period, and unfortunately I do think a lot of times, unfortunately, it's going to be very hard to find some of these grave markers. Revolutionary War soldier Thomas McNair. I believe one of these, yeah, this is William Bertram. Can't really read it, but I can read it from here. It says William Bertram. So that was the first pastor in 1732, and we will return here, because I do want to get back here. I want to do a little bit more research. Maybe I can spend a little more time when my foot isn't causing as many issues as it is right now, but it's just sort of where I'm at physically right now. So anyways, this is a Derry Churchyard. It's a beautiful cemetery. love to spend more time in here, but it's just sort of with stuff the way it is what it is. But anyways, we will come back here because there's a lot more to see here and a lot more of these graves I want to look at in a little more in depth. But anyways, so thanks everybody. I appreciate you coming along on another adventure here, and we will see you about town.